Americans who have moved abroad, how has it been in your new country? Lived in London for a year and Shanghai for 3 years. 5 to 8th grade total. Truly the experience of a lifting, and I will forever be grateful. From history, to food, to friendships, I soaked it up like a sponge. My whole family is from Kentucky, so this was a culture shock like no other. Ended up having a really hard time adjusting back when I started high school in the US. Been living in NZ for the past 3 years now. It has its issues, but man, it is an amazing and beautiful country. Highly recommend. I moved to England 17 years ago. I have a better work-life balance. NHS and private medical through work if I need it. More vacation days. Things seem cheaper in some regards here. Quick travel to Europe is great. The downside is being so far from family. I haven't been back to the US in 6 years. You know you're from a third world country when none of these answers is your country. I moved from NYC to Tokyo, Japan. I've only been here for like a year and a half. I also speak somewhat decent Japanese. But it's really fun. I recommend for like a vacation or just a short visit. I lived in Germany for 4 years. Best years of my life. Nothing about politics. I just found that I loved everybody and everybody loved me. My favorite conversation was from somebody that hated Americans. We had a beer and made friends. He was probably right in thinking the American military sucks, but we got to drink for me to remember if that was why he hated my country. Saudi Arabia sucked. But I made a lot of money. 2 years there. Japan was awesome. But I didn't have much money, so I really couldn't enjoy it much. 1 year there. Living in Merida, Mexico for 6 months now. Love it here. The food is phenomenal. Internet is great. I work remotely. And the people are friendly and patient with our lack of Spanish skills. We're learning. The things I miss the most are cheese. There is a serious lack of cheese diversity here. And books in English. Thank God for Kindle. *edit. It is freaking hot. Compared to Indiana winters. Though. I think I can adapt. Eye-opening. I've always known that the US has a lot of propaganda and nationalism. But it wasn't until I moved to Europe that I got to experience the being an outsider looking in. I'm not sure if what I said makes sense. It's kinda hard to explain. I lived in Armenia for 3 years and loved it after the initial adjustment. My biggest life regret is moving back to America. I miss it every day and fully intend to go back when my child is grown to live out the rest of my life there. I lived in the Netherlands for 5 years and Canada for 2. I guess it worked well as I met my husband there. Having lived in England, Sweden, Japan, Argentina, and Uganda, I can assure you that it's great. Honestly, all Americans should spend at least a year abroad at some point. Most people here have such an insular view of the world and have been brainwashed to believe that we are somehow the best. People are great, and experiencing different cultures and ways of life can truly help you relate to others in a much more altruistic way. Moved to a third world country. People don't fight masks over here. Also, I don't really see anyone carrying assault rifles in Starbucks here either. Weird. If you get injured, you can actually go see the doctor without having to mortgage your house first. I moved to South Africa and nearly killed myself and others on the road a few times because here they drive on the left side of the road. Lahore K madman. Just joking. I also still can't get used to a traffic light being called a robot and a roundabout being called a circle. Imagine the joy on their face. If they end up in hospital and walk out after a surgery without having to sell their house and kids. Mind blown. Moved to Alaska over a decade ago. Things are wild here. Trails are crowded. People everywhere. The weather is shit. Wildfires. Earthquakes. Tsunamis. Bears. Volcanoes. Angry moose. Do not recommend moving here. Other Americans. Especially Texans. This is not the place for you. Please stop moving here. If any readers not in USA want a nice American boy HMU. Moving from California counts as moving abroad, right? Lived in Europe for 4 years. Loved it there. Now, I resent the US even more. Been living in Taiwan and I feel super safe. I can take my dog out to the park at 1 a.m. and never have to worry about getting mugged. Only thing I miss from the US is the food. Been living in Canada for 7 years. Moved for work. Don't really like it and can't wait to move back to the US later on this year. Moved to the UAE where my husband was born and raised and love it so friggin' much. I came back to the USA to visit my mom and got stuck here due to COVID. I didn't feel much culture shock going there. Some but not a lot. The toilets in the ground were a bit of a shock the first time but I'm used to it now. I feel more at home there than I ever did here and I am glad we are going back in a couple of months. Quick PSA. You're going to get opinions that support the Reddit Hive narrative. It's just how the narrative works. South Korea just seems like a totally different place than here. Yo. At least you got Taco Bell and Panda Express now. Lol. I remember when the first Taco Bell opened in Itaewon. And now you got Panda Express. My parents live in SK2 and I miss them. The Korean food here in Taipei is hit or miss and if I want a taste of home, I've got to make my own. Greater than that being said, it is very apparent we would always be considered outsiders and treated differently. Even if we lived here. There is a general mistrust of foreigners that some people have. It has caused a few problems since we arrived. As someone very interested in at least visiting Japan sometime, can you elaborate on this? My eldest is 24. Speaks Japanese conversationally. His Mandarin is better. But oh well. And plans to emigrate permanently to Japan in the next year or two. And I'm not surprised. His personality has always been more like the Japanese people I know than like that of other Americans. Basically, he's aware there's a big country out there full of polite people who eat the best food in the world. And that's where he wants to be. So Tokyo Drift was a lie? What about the parking garages? Are there hundreds of half-naked ladies? Yay. The only bit of outside culture you'll find in Kentucky is in Louisville. That sounds really nice. I'd love to just move abroad. I probably wouldn't come back though. As a Kiwi, I'm really interested in what you think the problems with our country are. What do you do for fun? American here also living in NZ. Everything closing at 6 p.m. and nothing to do, nowhere to go is driving me crazy. Easy to be enamored with everything, pretty much sums up what I love about travel. Been on the road 10 plus years and that feeling of being on an alien planet is exhilarating. And exhausting sometimes, haha. 5 years is a long time. Did you go back to the States after? Yeah, no. I'm gonna have to disagree with you on the food front. I think Italian food is much better in the States than it is in Italy. Would like to hear if anyone agrees. I may need to scroll further but no one has mentioned Denmark yet. What would the language barrier be like if you speak zero Japanese? $700 billion is an unreasonable budget for the military, don't you think? Ha ha ha. A German hates our military? If it wasn't for our military, they would still be idealizing Hitler. He's an idiot and #X200B. My country had Hitler rule, but I hate America. That sounds really interesting. How different was it there than here? In January, when Trump was in office, I got the impression majority of Americans would get their vaccines by September 2021. Which seemed so far away. Now Biden in the office. His 100 million vaccines within 100 days goal actually happened. And I got my second dose last week. The Holy Trinity. I waited for this day to come since last summer. The EU Commission have really fucked up on vaccines. But let's blame that on AstraZeneca. And it not working anyway. Oh no. It does now. But don't give it to over 65s. Now it's okay for over 55s. This week's state of play anyway. Just remember, *y, America is rolling out vaccines as fast as they are. Because we have a sizable percentage of the population that thinks the virus is a hoax and masks are going to kill you or your freedom or whatever. Getting most of us vaccinated is pretty much our only hope. It sounds interesting. But the fact on the vaccines isn't a good thing. There are good and bad things about every country. I wish there was some sort of expat exchange system. I loathe hot weather and I am always looking for AC places here in Mexico. Planning to go to Canada when they reopen, and I am sure someone there must hate the cold weather. Yeah, I find that generally Americans are extremely patriotic with flags everywhere and huge respect for the military, etc. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not really as rife in the rest of the world, I don't think. If you want to see more nationalism, come to Canada. There's a maple leaf on every fucking company logo, even McDonald's. Every Canadian has a leaf tattoo. It's honestly so cringe. I thought the US was bad, but it's typically undereducated people in the US who are crazy about red, white and blue. Here you see university graduates from liberal cities like vomiting nationalist pride. It's so fucking weird. I'm sure that even though we're aware of the propaganda and nationalism, a lot of it goes unnoticed because we don't know anything else. I have worked in Japan, the Netherlands, the UK, and the US. This does not sound anything like my experience in the US. On average, yes, you get less personal holiday time. However, you usually get a bit more national holiday time than the Netherlands. Anyway, maybe your good job wasn't really all that good. But sounds like you're living a great life wherever you went to. The US is not the best country, but for me, I couldn't imagine leaving my family members to live in a country where I may not speak their language. At one time I was in love with a guy from France who was in America on work visa. Well, eventually he had to leave, but he wanted me to come with him. I said no because I didn't want to leave my family behind. Greater than an underdeveloped nightmare dystopia compared to the rest of the world, yay, especially China and Africa and India and Indonesia, where, you know, most of the people in the world live? America way worse. Sure thing, buckaroo.